My name is Kyle Ceci. I am a reference librarian at Delta College, soon to be titled instruction librarian. So we're very excited about that. I am here with Denise Hill, who is an English faculty at Delta College, and then Natalie Sika, who is a student who is going to give some perspective on some of the stuff we're going to cover. So our program is titled Transformative Pedagogies, Rethinking Library Instruction Past the One-Shot Sessions. Today we're going to cover a few things. I'll see how this will work. All right, we're going to cover a little bit. We're going to cover some research background on our process of moving past the one-shot instruction here at Delta College. We have decided to and started to move past one-shots and move on to doing longer library research instruction. So we're going to talk about some of the research background and how we got here. I'm going to talk briefly about our instruction format. Natalie's going to give her perspective. She does have somewhere to go, so after that she's going to leave. So if you have questions for her, just let us know and we'll get them to her. She's going to give her perspective as a student who went through our longer form instruction. So that'll be very cool. And then Denise is going to give her perspective as a teaching faculty on how that impacted her class, how she built her class around it. And then we'll talk about how this can work at your institution. We know at Delta College, we are a 2-year community college. So sometimes a little confusing because we don't have the word community college in our name. But we are a 2-year community college. So I know for many university folk, it'll be a little bit different. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I do have a small background in university work, so I'm not completely foreign to your guys' needs. So I'll talk a little bit about that and what can be done at your place as well. So we're just going to talk a little bit about the research background, why we kind of thought about rethinking the one shot in the first place. It did not just come naturally. I've only been at Delta for 2 years, and Denise had approached me about maybe changing it up within 6 months of being there. So it wasn't something that just organically shot up. Denise had thought about it, had some ideas for it. And then I started looking into some of the things about research about like one shots, the efficacy, what library instruction research is out there. So one of the studies that we work very closely with was one done by Grand Valley State University, also in Michigan. And they did a study on the correlation between library instruction and student retention. They found a positive correlation between library instruction and student retention. I find this really important to share because we really do need to be rethinking and revitalizing our instruction programs because especially for us 2-year colleges, and I know at your 4-year universities, student retention is very important. We don't want to lose sight of that. The other cool thing about this research, which has been helping us a lot, is this is something that I can share with our teaching faculty, our admin, and all of those to show why revitalizing our library instruction is really important. I don't think anybody here wants to go into this process without data, right? And data-driven stuff is what we do, especially at our school. Data-driven is just everything these days. So if you can't go in with data, you're not going to get anywhere. So one of the biggest data pieces that we have are this positive correlation that Grand Valley State's doing. We're actually hoping to do this study and repeat it with our programs to see if our extended library instruction is getting us even further than just our traditional one-shots. We hope to eventually show that one-shot instructions, while do help retention, actually having longer research programs like we do is helping retention even further. And then hopefully we'll find out if it's helping our transfer students and other things like that because we are a transfer institution and that is another big reason. We'll talk a little bit about that soon. So since we thought this was going to help us, right? So we tried to entice teaching faculty. Denise was nice enough to just kind of join me along the ride. She actually was one of the ones that brought me this idea first. So it was really cool that we were looking into this and she had already thought of this and it was a nice match. But this is one of our research backgrounds. The other thing that we looked at, right? So for us, again, we're a 2-year community college. We found so many libraries in K through 12 are just not staffed anymore. They're not. So a couple big stats in the state of Michigan, we have lost 46% of our full-time equivalent librarians since 2009. So we're nearly halving our librarians in K through 12. That leaves a lot of our students coming into our school with no research experience whatsoever, never having experienced a librarian in their classroom, never having experienced really using a library properly. And you can only imagine if you've never used your high school library, what a college library looks like. I think of our community college library really not that big. For those of you at a university, this is something you should really be focused on. Your library is intimidating. I was a first generation college student. I had no idea how to use a library. Library research wasn't necessarily something I understood. I even had librarians in my high school and I still didn't understand it. So think about how many of your students come in without that. We also looked nationally. We saw a loss of 14,799 K through 12 full-time equivalent librarians since 2000, and that's across the country. So across the country, we've lost that many full-time equivalent jobs, and we're losing more and more K through 12 librarians. So we just kind of knew when Denise brought this to me, I knew this was something we should be doing because we're, especially early on in college, a lot of our students are not sure about the library and they don't know what they need to be doing. So we need to really provide good and vigorous library instruction. We really, really wanted to emphasize this before we get into what we're doing because it makes more sense once you know why we're doing it, what we started to do. So what did we do here at Delta? And this is the main thrust of what we're going to be talking about, what we've done and how we've done it. We started to move away from the one-shot library instruction where possible. We have found that students traditionally do a one-shot and then they just kind of like disappear if they don't want any more help, but that they don't always get what they need out of it. A lot of students, I'll go through a second time with them, maybe from English 111, which is our first year or our first English class, to a 112, which is our second English class, and they'll say, man, well, I really needed this in between. I needed something in between because I took a bunch of classes before this and I didn't get everything I needed in the first one. Or I'm through 112 and now I could have used this all these other classes before, right? We had so many students. We also have a lot of students that slip through and never see a librarian, but then go off and transfer to university. Big problem for us. Universities, and I'm sure you guys know, as you get higher up as a junior or senior, typically you don't see librarians as anymore in your classrooms. You don't see them as much. You may see them in some junior level classes, but it's not very common. So we had a lot of students who needed comprehensive library instruction before they went off to a university to use your guys' stuff. So we moved away from a one shot in some cases. Denise was our first, and we have variations including a 2-session flipped classroom model. So we have them do an online before, we then come in and we do something second. So that frees us up when we come into the classroom to not do some of the nuts and bolts stuff because they've already done it on their own. I can briefly touch on it and we could do more activity, which is always big. We have a 3-session long, so each session is an hour long. We have 3-hour long in-person sessions. I will share the PowerPoint. Yeah, sorry. I can share that with you guys by the end. But we have those 3-session ones. So the 3-session is 3 hours long. The reason I do this is because me and Denise pioneered the 4-hour one, and somehow, as you can imagine, not everybody was on board with giving me 4 hours of their class time. So shockingly, I needed to cut that down a little bit. So we cut it down. Some of them are okay with 3. So I have 3 people right now doing 3 sessions. And then we have our 4-hour long in-person sessions. So it's 4 separate hour-long in sections. We do them once a week for 4 weeks. And that is what me and Denise have been doing. That was actually our pioneer program, which has been great because honestly, going really big at the beginning has helped a lot of people go like, oh, 3 doesn't sound that bad because I know you want to do 4. We're kind of negotiating by starting off really big. So we do those, and they're each designed to fit their individual class needs. So there are no 2 of these that are the same. And you can ask Denise, and you can go ask everybody else that no 2 English classes at Delta College are the same either. So it would be pointless if they were the same because they don't teach the same. So each of these are very flexible, built to their own class needs, and it's really important that you kind of deal with that. Communication and flexibility are the 2 biggest things if you do want to move past the one shot in your institution. Do not come at it thinking you know exactly what they want you to do. Do not come at it thinking this is the only thing I will do. If you do that, it will not work. So Denise Hill, she is going to talk a little bit after this, but she uses our 4-session model. And she was our first teaching faculty to kind of take the plunge, join us with that. And like I said, they're all unique to their needs. And our most successful sessions, the ones that I do with Denise, are half lecture, half activity. So I do a lecture, and this will kind of go on to the next point down there. They're categorized by source type. So I typically do about half an hour to 45 minutes of a lecture on a specific source type, how to use it, what they are, why professors want them to use it, what they might find out there, things they might need to watch out for. So I do that with books, magazines, and newspapers. I lump those together for our needs, academic journals, and internet sources. And so I'll say, hey, this is a half an hour on how to use an academic journal. Let's look at how to read it. Let's look at how to evaluate them. Let's look at which ones we want to use. We're a community college. Some of our students, sometimes they don't necessarily want to use certain academic journals. So we talk about what is a lit review versus what is a research article with original research and maybe why you use one or the other. And then we do an activity where I make them go out and find an actual article and show it to us why they would use it. This kind of models the idea of an annotated bibliography. So while I'm doing these sessions, they're almost doing an annotated bibliography. They're almost doing their pre-research in class with me, which is really helpful. And Denise will talk a little bit more about this. These students, by the time they get to their research paper, a lot of them have already done their research, so they don't even need to do it. And if they haven't done their research, they already know what they're going to do. So it's really, really rewarding for a lot of our students. They change a lot of what they're doing while they're doing this. Because it's 4 weeks long, they actually have a long time to figure out what they even want to research. I know for some of you guys, you give them the paper and they like jump off and they go like, oh, I have a week to figure out what I want to do and to write all this stuff. We've kind of extended the research paper 4 weeks early in a way to make sure they know and are thinking about it beforehand. Because we don't do this, it's the other thing, we don't do this right up until the paper's time. We do this way early. So we do this maybe in the first 5 weeks of class, and Denise, we've changed it a few times, but we do this really early on. So the students are thinking about research from the get-go, and they know what they want to do. They maybe have an idea of what they want to research, so it's really cool. So we do our 4 sessions. I leave. Denise does some cool activities after. Again, she's going to talk a little bit more about this, and I think it's important to hear her perspective. And they do some cool activities, and we get through it. But in reality, what we're finding is that these 4 sessions have created some really cool stories. And I'm gonna let Natalie speak in a second because she's got to go soon. But we've had some really cool stories. We had a student, and when I say the initial research topic, we let them research anything, so don't judge us on this one. But he wanted to research LeBron James, and we were like, that's fine if that's what you want to do. It was the beginning of the 4 weeks. We had no issue. He went 3 weeks through every source he found was about LeBron James. We were like, that's totally cool. If this is what you're gonna write your paper on, please do it. By the end of that 4th week, he just said, screw it, I'm switching my topic. And he did something on Jim Crow laws in the South, something his family had encountered. So he changed his research topic, felt empowered enough to actually do the research by the end of this. Something that had I given him a one-shot instruction, he would have just stuck with his topic and done LeBron James, which while I'm not judging, that's a fine topic. I'm happy for him to do any research. I think it was showing him a student who was going to school for welding, mind you, not for anything that was going to be heavily academic, that he could do academics too. And it was really cool. It was a really transformative experience for some of our students. So this sort of stuff can actually change some of your students' mindsets, especially some of your students who maybe are struggling most. And if you guys are at university, some of your students who are probably most likely to leave are going to be the students that would be impacted by this. And that might be something to bring up to your admin, to your faculty, that this will catch some of your most at risk to drop out students. And we all know we all have them. I don't care if you're at University of Michigan or if you're at a community college, we all have them. So these are the students you're catching. This is what's really good for this. So this is what I want you guys to focus on and say, hey, maybe we need to do this. Maybe we start small and do 2 sessions. Maybe we jump all the way into 4. Maybe one of you guys is cool enough to get 5. I don't know what it is, but try and get something. All right, so I'm going to sit back in second now and let Natalie speak on her experiences. Natalie's a student at Delta. She just did this in our English 112 class with me and Denise. So she is going to give her kind of perspective on this and talk a little bit about what she experienced and how she liked it. So I will let her speak now.
Hi, my name is Natalie. I hope everyone is having a good afternoon. I was a student of Professor Hill's this past semester. Kyle's instructions fit very well into a normal class schedule. I feel Kyle coming to my class multiple times has helped my class build a personal relationship with him and has helped us feel more comfortable to be open and willing to grow and learn in our skills of writing and being able to do formal research. I personally use Kyle's methods while doing my research. One of the main resources I used was the Delta Library System. He taught us how to find credible resources and what to look for when choosing a source while doing our research. I definitely will continue using the skills that I have received this past semester. I feel all the information that I have retained from the class will help me in my future classes and with my career. I would say my favorite part of Kyle's instruction was the skills that we learned about credible and useful note taking. That was one of the one of the main points of his instructions to my class was note taking, and it helped so much. I feel like my skills have grown and I'm planning on continuing using what I have learned. Professor Hill and Kyle are both amazing teachers and even more amazing individuals. And I have grown not only as a student, but also as a person this last semester. So I just want to say thank you so much. It means the world. And I hope everyone has a great day today. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, and if you guys have any questions for her, she does have to go. She was only here for a little bit of time. But just shoot us an email. My email and Denise's email will be at the end. If you want to talk to us, we'll get the questions to her and she can respond to you guys. I do think it's great to have her perspective, and I do thank you, Natalie, for joining us. And you're welcome to step out if you need to.
Thank you for having me. I hope everyone has a great day.
Thanks. So like she said, there was a lot of cool stuff that we did with the students. One of the things about note taking, and I'm not going to take credit for that. While I do like note taking, this is a Denise thing. Denise enforces note taking, very drill and sergeant like. But we do use this as an opportunity to learn how to take notes. Again, for a lot of our students, note taking, and I do not think this is any different in a university. Note taking's hard. So a lot of students don't come in with note taking abilities. So catching students early on and just talking in a low stakes environment about how to take notes on topics that they don't know anything about is really great. A lot of our students, research is new. So what better example of saying like, let's learn to take notes together on something like research, right? If you tell them let's take notes on something like, a paper or writing, they're going to be like, well, I have some experience with this. So they might not maybe want to do that or might not be super new. Um, but yeah, I've seen some really impressive leaps and bounds with note taking a little bit, and I think that's a cool thing. So I'm also going to step aside and let Denise give her perspective as teaching faculty on how this went, and then we'll continue after that. Oh, I can't hear you, Denise. Hold up. Let's see if we can hear her. Is she there? Oh, she might have something get unplugged. It was also good just a minute ago. It's how it always goes. Nope. That's so weird. Maybe if you leave and join back, it might let you work. Unless you muted something on your end. I don't know what you have to mute. Um, she did. Okay, I will keep talking. I will skip really quickly, briefly past this and let her figure out that thing. Some things that I want to just focus on for institution to keep the institution, for your institution, how to create this at yours. You need to identify some faculty who are willing to kind of take on a challenge. And honestly, what I found really useful is finding a faculty member who is respected in their department. Denise, and some of you might have heard this while we're talking between, she was formerly the chair of the department. She's a long-standing member of the department. She has a lot of pull and sway in the department. So working with her was really useful to me because a lot of people take her opinion, they come to her for advice. So finding Denise to be the person to talk for me, especially me, I'm a very young and new librarian, so they don't always say, I want to listen to you. If you've been faculty for a long time, you don't always want to listen to me, new random librarian guy who just showed up. So she's been really helpful. Identify the right faculty member. You might pick a few of them that are the wrong one. That's fine, but make sure you find that one that you can rely on, that you can work with permanently, because they're going to be your person. Um, have the research to show faculty to make your case. You need research, you need stuff. There's actually not a lot of research about this. We are hoping to write a paper about this, but I've only found one other school that's been able to do this. Marshall University had a program like this a long time ago. I've been meaning to reach out to them to see if they still do this. They had a 3 or 4 session thing as well. Not many schools do, but go out there and make that case that your students need it. Let's see if we can hear Denise now.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, we can. Wow, welcome back.
Fantastic.
All right,
Okay.
well,
Hey, thanks
I'm gonna stop
everybody.
and come back. Let Denise
Shut
talk
up,
for a
Kyle. Let
second.
me
I'll be
talk.
back.
No. All right. I'm sorry. I uploaded a PDF into the
Hmm.
chat. I don't know if people can see that or not.
Yep.
I also have it as a Word document. Even if you don't want to open that right now and take a look at it, I'm at least going
Well,
to paste in the title of a book that started all this. It's fairly
yes.
old now, but this was the document that got me going. I basically was coming back to teaching after working as an administrator for a little while as a division chair. And I realized I just wanted to revamp my second semester composition course, which is focused on research. And I was, quite frankly, just kind of bored with the model I'd been teaching for, decades of, produce a paper, produce a paper, produce a paper. And it is very paper production centered in composition. But that just didn't feel right to me, given a lot of the shifts I was seeing in our culture around technology and access to information. So this book, I just stumbled across it, don't know how, read it, and it changed my whole perspective, which is I changed my class. I transformed my class into a product producing class, into more of a research, emerged in research class. And so I wasn't as concerned about, can my students produce three, sort of different types of research papers. I was more concerned with how are they approaching their research. So it backed up into being a completely process-oriented class rather than a product-oriented class. And the assignments became built around the pieces of research. So instead of a final paper only, it would be built around what resources did you find today? And it got me to evaluate my students' work also very differently. I wasn't just looking again at that finished product of show me how you engaged with research sort of privately, and then presented that to me. I was in the research process with my students. I was seeing that research process. I was directing and mentoring and guiding that research process. So this was a really different approach. Given that it's not at all my area of expertise. I don't know what's out there for information technology. I swear that our libraries system changes every year. Like every fall I come back and they'll go, hey, here's what's new. And I'm like, I can't deal with that. I've already built my class around, what you had last year. So I think that's kind of a frustration too, that faculty might build their assignments or materials around something the library uses and then it changes. Well, get rid of that then. Stop building your assignment around it and let it be the library's assignment, because then they'll keep up with it. So I also had to learn to like back off and let go and admit that I don't know everything. I don't have all that information. And it was greatly freeing to me to be able to do that and just go, I don't have to know this. I can focus on these other parts of the class. And not only that, but I can bring in an expert. Like who is the person then? And I'm like, it's the librarian. So this did start before Kyle. I got one attempt at this with a previous librarian, and it was the year the pandemic hit. So we actually she and I went through and finished like 4 sessions, and then the school shut down. So Kyle was sort of like the reboot of this, and I was so happy. It was actually the librarian, mind you, our head librarian who came to me, or sorry, director of the library,
Sure.
who
Yeah.
came to me and said, hey, you had done this thing before. We're kind of looking for somebody to do it again. I don't think if she had not approached me, I don't think I would have gone trying to find another librarian, because I just didn't know people. We were coming back sort of after pandemic, just all very awkward. So that I was approached was super cool, that somebody would do the ask to me. And I was like, yes. And so there was Kyle. I have shared with you sort of the outline of those 4 sessions. And just as Kyle says, we haven't done it that many times together. I think 3,
Times. Yeah.
3 year, no, 3, is it
No,
3
three
years?
semesters.
3 semesters. Yeah.
Yeah, three
So,
semesters.
but every time it's different, because every time, even like right after he gives the session, he'll say, hey, here's what I think we need to change about this. Now that's a really integral piece here, because I think that speaks to the relationship that he and I have. The one-shot library instruction, there have to be some of you out there, I know librarians who you must roll your eyes at it too. Faculty roll our eyes at it. Students roll their eyes at it. They've all been through these one-shots that are not well tailored for what they're doing. They seem very generic. Some students have been through them 2 or 3 different times. And they're usually just like, I don't know, Kyle, you've had this terrible experience. Like you show up and the faculty walks out the door like it's their break time. That's just the absolute wrongest way to ever do something like this. Kyle and I have a partnership. And I even said to him, I think it'd be fine for the library to set some parameters and say, look, faculty, if you can't even sit in the room, we're not doing these instructions with your students. Like that's not what they're built for. They're not library babysitters for the day. So please hear that. Know that there's those of us out here who respect that this needs to be a full-on, a relationship between the faculty and the librarian. So I think that's a real key component. I sit back when Kyle is in the room and I act just like a student in my classroom. I use his sessions for note taking because I'm a terrible note taking teacher. I'm not a good lecturer. I give a little bit of instruction and then we do a lot of activity in my classes. There's a lot of mobility and moving and action going on. So, but I do think note taking is incredibly important. Whenever I have speakers who do come in, I use them for that note taking opportunity. So that's why Natalie mentioned that. But part of it's because I think that library instruction is so well structured that it provides that fantastic opportunity for note taking that also allows the instructor, again, to make that instruction meaningful. Like y'all don't get to just sit there on your phones. You actually have to actively take notes while he's in here speaking. And then I check those notes and I give them feedback on their notes. And it's for every single session, not just do it the first time and not again. No, every time he's there, they note take. And their first note taking production, by the way, is really awful. I mean, like awful. And I love it. And that's, I tend to teach by baseline, which means, okay, here, do this thing, such as take notes while Kyle is talking and show me what you're doing. And then I look at it and go, yuck. Instead of saying to them, do this, and then expecting them to perform, I first want to see their baseline performance. I want to see who's the most problematic in the room. Then I know what to focus on and who to give additional support to. And then to give, praise to those students who are doing it well and use those as some positive models. So that's why Natalie mentioned that, because that was such a huge component of the course. But it was those notes. I mean, that's the content that we kept going back to. When Kyle's not in the room, my whole class is, as he said, my whole class became built around this instruction. I lead up to it with students. I mention that he's coming in. I talk about why we're doing it this way. While he's there, he is the authority in the room. I defer to him. I ask him questions. I'll say, don't talk to me, talk to Kyle, like talk the information access expert. I get all these kinds of titles I give them. So again, that's the kind of role I think it's important for faculty to be able to embrace with that person in their room. And that is not for everybody. I get it. Like if you were to force faculty and say, you all have to do this, no, they're going to hate you. You're going to get total resistance. But like Kyle said, if you can find that one faculty, I was sitting there and the librarian, she found me, and since we've been promoting this on our campus, I became the voice for this. I'm the mouthpiece for it with our faculty. And I respect sort of that there's still some of them who don't want to do it. That's fine, but I think they're really missing out because they are in no way experts and they are in no way, I think, giving their students the service that they need when it comes to accessing information and understanding information technology. So that's just some really those key pieces in there. And then when Kyle's gone, I get to keep referring back to, do you guys remember what Kyle said? Do you remember this part of the library instruction? That continues through the entire semester. And that's why he has to be there early. He's not a tool to help them research for their paper. He is the instruction for accessing information that they're going to use for their whole lives, even when they're not in college. Thank you. I know it's a totally different philosophy that I think it's important to get faculty to wrap their heads around. So again, it's not just producing papers, it's producing, informed citizens who know how to access legitimate information in their decision-making process in their daily lives. So he frames it that way. I frame it that way. And again, it's just this fabulous relationship. And in speaking to the students, the class I do have the luxury of a 2.5-hour class. It's a certain model that we have at Delta College. We have taken away developmental education at Delta College, and we expanded some of the standard courses in time so that students have more time on task to get the support that they probably should have gotten in a developmental course. So we have the luxury of that time. And again, I think is what's helpful in this process, is being able to have that sort of like, here's Kyle, and then here's me, a little bit of split time. I always have an activity, as you can see from the PDF, that supports whatever it is that the instruction he's done. But he also knew what activities I wanted to do, and he builds his instruction around those. So just can't say enough to that sort of relationship. And these students tend to be much needier students at the community college. Should have been probably developmental students, a lot who are going into professional programs or tech and trade programs, have no intention of ever going to university, right? So I still have that pocket who intend to transfer to university, so they need that support. But these students who really, they want to get their degree and get into their professions, this is really important. But I can tell you for a fact, they are all coming from a place of library void. They don't know how to use a library. They've never had a relationship with a librarian. It's still the person who goes, to them in some stupid meme. So I think this is also really important to try to get rid of that, the derogatory relationship that they have in their head with like, what is a library and what's a librarian? So that's really important to me because I totally love libraries and librarians. And they are all coming from, all of them. I don't care where they went to school at this point. They are all coming in with very little to zero knowledge about a library and librarians. And so I don't appreciate my colleagues who say things like, go to the library. As someone who said they don't know how to library, go to the library or go talk to a librarian. That means zero to these students. Some of our students on our campus don't even know where our library is. And it's like literally in the middle of our campus, but they don't know where it is. They've walked past it lots of times, but have never walked into it. So I think that this is hugely problematic because I think that speaks to a cultural divide, kind of a privilege divide. I do think it's a privilege to grow up and have access to a library. I just do. I think it's a privilege to have access to a library in your public school. It shouldn't be, it should be a right, but it's a privilege. And so when people say things like that, I think they're not recognizing their privileged position in saying that to a student who has no concept of this. So that's a huge cultural divide that I'm trying to sort of like fill in that gap with this instruction as well. So that's some of what I have to say. Again, I've shared my information and I'd love to take questions. If there's something I've missed, I'll bring it up. So I'll turn that back to either Kyle or open to questions.
Yeah, and one thing she talked about that I don't think I mentioned, but the first session I do actually outline what an academic library is versus a public library and what the difference is, what I do versus a public librarian. I don't do that for any reason to say that they aren't doing this like the same job or a good job. I just like to outline to our students that we're not just like the people that help you find books, which again, I'm not saying that's what they do, but in their minds, that is what they do. So I have to like outline what an academic library is, how to use it, why we even have one on campus, because some students truly don't know. Denise has mentioned multiple times, we have students the first day, we actually have students go check a physical book out. None of them have done it. None of them have ever checked a book out. They're just like, I don't know, never checked a book out. Let me go. Do I need an ID? What do I need for this? And it's like, what are we doing, So
How do
that's
I
sort of,
rent? How do I rent this? That's one of my
yeah.
favorite lines from students. How do I rent this?
I get that in email about 40 times a day. So yeah, and another thing that helps with this and something that Natalie touched on was how much they can connect with me and communicate with me. After the class leaves, I see those students so often, it's crazy. We only have these students for 2 years. I still see a student I did this with the first semester with, so this is not 3 semesters later. I mean, I'm sure she's going to graduate soon. She may not, it's sometimes a little slower, but she still comes up and talks to me and says, hey, I need help with this for a different class, yada yada. Like this happens a lot. So like the amount of relationships I get to build with these students that transcend stuff. And I really think most of our students transfer to either Central Michigan University or Saginaw Valley State University. And I really think when they go to those schools, they are not scared to go get help. And so when our students that do transfer, again, not a ton of them do plan on doing that, but somebody like Natalie, who I know is, I think she will have no problem going to a library when she needs to. And what better can we be serving these students that they feel comfortable going to get the information they need when they leave? That's huge and really, and you guys all know now how easy it is for me. I get to work with her all the time. But I will say, and Denise doesn't know this, I don't think, I actually have one of our most not forward-thinking faculty tell me that what me and Denise are doing is great and they need to rethink their instruction. So while this is cool, not you think, wow, I get Denise, she's so great. I have one of our least forward-thinking faculty coming up and talking to me saying, wow, I really think I need to change this. He's not saying he's going to do this with me. Now, and granted, this is a man who gets mad if we like move books in the wrong order. Like
Oh.
he'll get mad at everything. Yeah, you know who it is. Um, he actually came up to me the other day, unprompted. I said nothing. He just said, I would like to change my library instruction because what you guys are doing is much better than what I'm doing. Once they see the change and once you get one person doing it and you do real work, they really do start to come to you. Like, this man has been teaching the same stuff for years, and I was told when I got there, like, be wary of this guy. He's scary. He's not. He's very nice. But you know, this is not his thing. All right, so I'm just gonna hop into questions because I see one that I
Yeah.
like, and I'm kind of done. I can kind of pull back this slide real quickly and just share. You guys can read the rest of this. This is mostly we've said all this at this point. I'm not really, the only other thing on here is make sure you're sustainable with your plan. Don't grow too quickly.
Mhm.
Don't do that. It's bad. But somebody in the chat did ask about teaching our students how to use AI tools for research. Yes, I'm using it. We just started this semester. This semester was our winter semester was our first time doing it. Um, I use a lot of AI to show them how to find keywords. It's about it. Because I show students how to use keywords, I show them like, hey, you can show it your research question and tell it what keywords should I use. And then you can also ask it for synonyms to keywords. It sounds dumb, and honestly, most of our students truly don't use it like that. But I do like to show them real ways they can use it before they get on trying to cheat with it because we don't need to be cheating with it. And once they know how to use a tool for real, they don't cheat with it. I do the same thing with Wikipedia. I show it, I explain what it is, I explain how to use it, so they do not cheat with it. So we're like knocking plagiarism down by just making this super simple. I
I
see
don't think
some,
this, yeah, I don't think the students were even that impressed with what you could do with AI. I think
nope.
they were like, there's some of mine are still learning AI.
Yeah.
Some of them are using it, like I say, without being aware of it. Like they let Copilot and Word do some of their writing for them, and they don't recognize that as AI. They're just like, yeah, it's this helper tool. So I think they were curious about it, and then they were like, cool, let's try it. And then when they did it, they were like, yeah, that wasn't even that good. And they liked
Yeah.
the library research tools
hmm
that you had taught them using the database. They just, even though that seemed clunkier to start with, and I think like that's the other thing, you got any library database trying to figure out how to do those search terms and keywords, and but once you walk them through it, and once you walk them through it multiple times in different formats, they tick that and they're like, oh, I can do this in Google and it kind of works the same way. Like then they were more comfortable going back and forth between at least a couple of tools. But AI, none of them after that session with you, but none of them went back and even used it again. They weren't that into it.
Yeah. So I see oh, do you want to say something real quick? Do we have like time
Yeah, so I just
constraint?
wanted to say that I know Denise, you had asked for Logan's question to expand on
hmm
accessibility. So he said that accessibility from both a disability standpoint, so preparation and provision of
Oh, yeah.
materials, as well as approaching models of learning, thinking about universal design for learning in terms of accessibility. How do you prioritize accessibility in this mode of instruction?
So I think one thing from we actually, and I that's one thing I don't think we have just because I don't think we've run into a, student with a serious, you know what I mean? Like with serious needs like that. Like we've done the way we've done it. And if student brings me something, we'll work with them on it. But I'm trying to think like for a lot of our students, the way we're doing this learning, you know what I mean? I've just not gotten anybody that's had any issues with it. So maybe that's something I need to focus on more. You know what I mean? Like I'm not sure, Denise, maybe you could shed some more light on it. To
Yeah,
me,
and that's why I ask on if you could expand on the type of accessibility, because I am prior to our elimination of developmental education, that was my main teaching load. So I've always taught for the last almost 30 years. developmental writing, developmental reading. I work mainly with students with disabilities and an array of disabilities. And so shifting that over into a composition course, I'm kind of wondering, again, this is that specialized 2.5 hour extended course time. I'm kind of wondering if I might just do some things so naturally, or I'm so used to having students with certain characteristics in my classroom that I don't necessarily think about it. It's just a part of my teaching approach. So that one I'm struggling with, because I think, sure, I mean, I have students with all different kinds of characteristics in my classroom. And I'm trying to think of, was there one who might have struggled where we didn't address something that we could have up front?
I kind of see what he's saying a little bit about like
Yeah.
providing guided note packets and stuff like that. So we don't necessarily do stuff like that, but I think the way we go through it, at least in my eyes, has worked really well for students with it, because we don't just do things once, everything's done multiple times. It's a scaffolded session setting. So session 1 scaffolds into 2, into 3, into 4. While they're taking their own notes, they have access to these the entire time. They also have access to me at any time. So if there are more issues, we have the way to work through it with them. I spend a lot of time with them individually as well. So while they're doing their assignment at the end of my thing, that part, I spend time with each of them individually. Our class sizes are very small. So granted,
Yeah.
this is not going to work for everybody. Class sizes range from anywhere to like maybe at most 15. I don't think we've had any bigger classes than like
We
15
have
to 20.
18 is our cap for our
Yeah, I
class.
was okay. So 18. So we do work a lot individually with the students, and I think that's maybe our best thing. So that would be where I would kind of go with. Do you do formal
Yeah,
evaluations? That's a
I have
question I want.
students, sorry, I have
Oh, no, go
students who
ahead.
struggle. I have students who do struggle with the note taking. So just let me really quickly speak to that, because I don't want to ignore that. Yeah, I do recognize that. I actually make photocopies of the notes that I take, which is why I take them. And I say to any student, if you want a copy of my notes, just tell me so that you can see this. And I've had numerous students, Natalie's one of them, who have looked at my notes and gone, oh, wow. And having a model has really helped them. But again, I don't give it to them until after the first time. I also, but please understand, I create a really receptive classroom environment. We've got food, we got fidgets, we've got all kinds of drawing and coloring implements in my classroom. Students can color and draw and fidget while they're in my class to their heart's content, so long as they can produce for me and I can keep them on track as we continue. And I've had students who, again, just really struggle with the note taking. And so I've actually sat right next to a student for a few sessions because he just wanted to watch me as I was taking the notes. And I'm like, absolutely. And I hunkered right down next to him. And now I realize, since he asked me that, I will offer that for students who I see are struggling. I'll even say, do you want to sit next to me next time so you can watch me take my notes? For one student, she even just said, nobody ever told me I could draw in my notes before. And I'm a very visual person, so I teach them how to use drawing in their note taking as well. And that just kind of like blew her mind. So that's all I want
Okay,
to say about that.
so we are up at time. We do
Okay.
have two questions that I think we can get in real quickly. Okay, so Kyle, I see that you answered
Yeah.
Kelly's question about the
Yeah, it was
chat. You
just
use
Chat GPT.
ChatGPT.
Mm-hmm.
And
Formal
then one
evaluation.
question from Emily said, do you do formal evaluations from students after these sessions?
So we do a pre-test and a post-test where I really am, and the pre-test is not a test, it's actually just them gauging their own skills. So I can go in there and say like, oh, you think you're a 5? Let's test that. And then they're not a 5, and it's very fun. And I think they enjoy that too. And then at the end, I ask them to kind of rate how they felt they actually were. So I give them to like allow to like, hey, did you actually think you were a 5 at the beginning, or do you now think maybe you weren't? I let them evaluate me. So I asked them for stuff they wanted to learn more of, stuff they didn't get enough of, which is actually how I change stuff up. I don't like tests. I do not like quizzes. And I don't know about you guys, but for some reason they don't work for me. We do quizzes that are not graded sometimes for fun, because she makes zines, which are these little cute little magazine things that we like make quizzes out of, and they're very fun. But we don't do them. I'm not an assessment librarian, and I don't want to be one either.
Yeah.
So until somebody else is gonna do that for me, no. So there's no formal evaluations. It's really just like student feedback, and truthfully, from there, I've gained what I needed to. And that's the best we can do. And no one's asking me for it either, so don't
Great,
suggest
that's
that.
great. Well, I just want to thank the both of you and
Mhm.
Natalie for coming. That's really great of her to give her
Mhm.
time today.
Yep,
I believe there is a Denise Hill for President campaign happening in the
possibly.
chat.
Could be.
So I think that from all the librarians in the room today, we say to Denise, thank you so much for being a wonderful faculty collaborator from us to you. So thank you very much. I'm sure Kyle feels the same way. But
Mhm.
thank you for being here today at LIT and sharing your experience with us.